welcome to hashtag 52 Needs. And this week we are talking about integrity. And I'm very privileged to have with me Geoff Wade, who is an experienced corporate executive management consultant, who's got multiple degrees in science and engineering and business and NLP. And he has worked in pretty much every industry except, what was it?
No, there are a few that I haven't worked in.
Construction.
I said, well, I haven't worked in construction.
But because of that background, you've just bringing and your knowledge of psychology and cognitive science, you bring an amazing array of skills with you so that you can help your clients drive business performance and leadership development. And your specialty is psychological safety.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it's really great that we talk about integrity, because that is what's really important, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, psychological safety and integrity.
Yeah. And for those who may not have heard the phrase, psychological safety in the personal space and the corporate space, anywhere, psychological safety is basically that you feel like you're not going to be put at risk psychologically, emotionally, if you speak up. If you ask a question, if you volunteer an idea, right? And there's been quite a bit of research done on it over the years, and it's clearly understood that there's a profound link between that and performance in any role. But it's really become more popular since 2017 when Google published the results of their study. And they've been trying to find out what differentiated great teams. And after 18 months of research and a lot of money and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of interviews, they came back and said, oh, it's psychological safety. We've got this organization full of the brightest of the brightest. And we thought it was all about that, but it's about their team dynamics. The ability to work together and be straight with one another and ask questions, be open and not feel as though. Oh, there was another element of it too. Psych safety is very much about the willingness to make mistakes and know that you and the team will work with the mistake as a learning opportunity.
Yeah. And then the integrity comes in when you admit that you've made a mistake and don't try to hush over it and say, I didn't make a mistake. And we've got a lot of leaders who obviously, unfortunately, not really walking that talk.
That's
right?
It's funny, with our topic or our frame for this one is more around personal life. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, oh, there's personal life and there's political life. And I was, integrity is so vital for our political leaders and so sadly lacking. And if I can back that up, I mean, that's just such a sweeping statement. And I don't say that from a political persuasion. I'm actually highly skeptical about politics. So it comes from the perspective of someone who's just looking at human behaviour and research on human behaviour. And I'll talk about Australia, although there may be a wider audience, but it's a pretty damning set of statistics I'm going to share with you. In this nation, our politicians do not have a reputation for integrity, truth and honesty. And that's reflected, I don't know if you've ever heard of this called the Edelman Trust Barometer. And it came to fruition about 20 years ago after the invasion of the Wall Street and the loss of faith in the institutions and society, their economic models, and the Edelman Group started doing research into trust. And they have since then done this annual survey that globally looks at not-for-profits, at business and government, and it measures, it gives trust indicators. The scary thing is when you drill down and look at the specific figures for Australia, the numbers vary between 93% and 97% of the population do not trust our politicians. That's really fascinating, because that's a survey that's looking at people who have probably died in the wool, one political persuasion or another, and they're still not blinded to the point where they have faith in their leaders. 9 out of 10 people don't trust them. And then we don't trust them to deal with complex problems, to tell the truth about them. And there are several dimensions where the results we're all sitting in the 90% don't trust. And that is because these people have behaved without integrity. They have made mistakes and then denied them, or they've broken the law, some of them, for heaven's sakes, and then dodged responsibility.
Or made promises and did a 180-degree U-turn and went, oh, no, I'm not doing that.
Yep. And the other classic that we see is we expect them to pass legislation to set policies that are in the interest of the nation. And we see them pass policies and pass laws that are in the interests of a small group of extremely wealthy unions or corporations who are funding their political parties. And we're sitting back going, hang on a second, this is actually impinging upon our quality of life or our freedoms. And it's got no advantage to the nation that we can perceive. Why are they doing this? Oh, yes, right. They want to get re-elected. And our trust in them goes down because there's no integrity in terms of, there's not an alignment, if you will, between what they're doing and what their stated intention is.
Yeah. Well, they do say very harshly that we always get the politicians we deserve. So does that mean we don't have to? Does that mean we don't have integrity?
I think it means, I think it's a little cruel, actually, because you can say, okay, the people who voted for the party that is elected get what they deserve. There will always be a group who go, actually, no, I'm skeptical, I'm voting somewhere else. And you know, whatever that might be. So I'm not comfortable with that, because
I was baiting you.
Yeah, I know. There's an element of, I get it, and it only takes 51% to win. You can have 49% who have a different perspective.
Yeah, I was actually just curious in the context of, you know, people always going, I didn't, you know, it's like, I didn't vote for that person, so therefore, or, you know, but again, there's a big relationship between integrity and accountability.
Yeah.
As well. And I think that's, and self-responsibility as well.
Yeah. And there's this piece, actually, it's interesting. Moving away from politics, because that, for me, that was interesting, just the trust piece.
Absolutely.
When their behavior lacks integrity, those statistics, for me, I just find them overwhelming. I can recall times when we looked up to our political leaders and we had faith in them, and their lack of integrity over the last few decades is having them perceived in the most tragic way, at the worst possible light. So getting back to personal integrity, that quality of being honest in your personal relationships, or that quality of being honest with yourself and aligned, I'll play with that second piece to begin with. You and I have often talked about how people can sabotage themselves. The New Year's resolution being the classic, you know. Sorry, I just fell off my desk. A competent professional. It's a hard thing to do. I've spent years mastering that particular talent, right? If anyone's really interested, I'll teach you how to fall off your desk. But getting back to the topic at hand, it's fascinating the number of times that people don't carefully think through their goals, if you will. So I might make some statement that I'm going to do something. I've got an outcome, a goal, and I'm not talking a specific example yet. I'm just talking pattern. I'll jump into an example in a moment. And I don't always ask the question, all right, what am I doing that for? And does that outcome actually align with the bigger picture? And then if I think of the longer term flow-on consequences and effects, and the longer term consequences and effects for the ecosystem in which I live, which is me, but it's also all the people, the family, the friends, the work, the community that I live in. I find it's interesting the number of times people will pick a goal where there is misalignment at some point, because now the check you can have is those flow-on effects are aligned with the intention as well. A lot of the time when people think it through that way, they'll find that the reason that they're not succeeding in getting an outcome is because there is a lack of integrity between those three levels, if you will, of considering the outcome. So it's integrity just pops up everywhere in terms of this being whole, this being unified or congruent, but also in being honest. And I think of I'm thinking of a story to support that particular example, but one of the ones that comes to mind is, and unfortunately it's a real story, and the names will be changed to protect the innocent and the guilty, but it was a young man who was not happy with his body shape. So he decided he was going to get lean and get fit, and he was going to enjoy greater health. He was in a long-term relationship with someone who was a little obese. Mm-hmm. He got himself fit, but he didn't include her in the equation. And what happened was, tragically, the relationship fell apart because when he got himself lean and fit, a lot of other women started to notice him, and his partner, whom he still dearly loved, became insecure and became threatened, and they started having fights, and ultimately the relationship dissolved. And then his physique returned to what it was, because he attributed at some level, probably unconsciously, the outcome with having got fit. But if you think about that, intention, outcome, and consequences, the consequences were totally misaligned because he didn't think that through, and he didn't include her in the equation, which doesn't necessarily mean he had to go to the gym with her.
No.
But if they had worked through it together, so that there was integrity at every level of that particular process, he could have preserved the relationship. And it was a really sad outcome because he didn't do that.
Yeah. Okay, so integrity plays out on all sorts of different levels and all sorts of different, but it starts with the self, right?
Yes.
So you can't be in integrity with other people unless you're in integrity with yourself.
True.
Unless, and I've asked myself that, can you be in integrity with yourself and not be in integrity with other people and hurt them? Or, again, like this guy, not even think about the consequences because you are just in integrity with yourself because these are the values that you're fulfilling. Yeah. It's a double-edged sword sometimes, isn't it?
It is, unless you start thinking that I live in a system and there are some things that I'm going to do that will impact me and only me. Go for it.
Yeah.
There are some things that I do, and I'm gonna quote. It's a framework that I heard from John Grinder, and it's stuck with me ever since he shared it. And he said, when you're doing things for yourself, and that only impact you, do what you like. You can do it based on belief. You can lack integrity. You're the only one who's going to face the consequences. The moment the consequences go beyond that to your immediate relationships or family, to your work peers, the whole equation changes. And now you have to consider, you've got to have integrity, you've got to have honesty and consider what's happening to that system. When you go further and it's going to have an impact on the community, wow, And then when you go further, let's imagine an impact on a nation or the whole planet. He said, it's all very well when it's just you, but the moment it goes beyond you, it has to be fact-based.
Yeah.
And that integrity to acting based on evidence and facts and consideration of the consequences for others is a piece of integrity that seems to be, harking back to, I suspect that's part of the problem with government or politics. they're driven by political dogma rather than fact-based decisions. There are some wonderful books about that. There's one that came out at the end of last year called, I think it's called Economics for Zombies or something, where it's Paul Krugman basically takes these 15 or 20 main political themes and then provides all the evidence for why they're just BS, and where there's academic research and actual nations who've employed entirely different approaches that have worked completely counterintuitive to what the political dogma is. And it's like we're still making decisions without integrity on that grand scale to fact and to how it impacts a community, a nation, the world, and can bring about real human suffering if it's not based on genuine evidence.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, internal consistency is such a vital piece. I think we talked earlier about in one of our other conversations, we talked about cognitive dissonance, where there's a misalignment between what's going on internally and the evidence in the world, and cognitive dissonance takes you in a bad direction.
Yeah, which is why, I totally agree with you that when it comes to other people, integrity really matters. I do think also that it matters with regards to myself, because if I keep saying I don't need to be, and I know you said, John Grinder said, as long as you can do whatever you want, as long as it's just about you.
Yeah.
My sense is that if I keep breaking my word with myself, if I keep saying, I'm going to go to the gym today, and 3 months later, I still haven't done it, I'm going to stop trusting myself. And it's very likely going to show up in relationships with other people as well, because if I can't trust myself, how can I trust other people?
That's cognitive dissonance again.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would imagine that it's going to show, certainly in my experience, it's going to show up in a lot more than not being able to trust other people. Your degree of happiness is going to degrade.
Totally.
Your quality, you're likely to experience that in all sorts of interesting ways. Your unconscious mind is going to get your attention around that. And you might not like the way it does it.
No, exactly. So,
and it's trying to get you back on the path of being aligned. And of course, the internet has frozen briefly.
This didn't work. Apologize. If you notice that you're out of integrity, apologize, make amends, move on.
Yeah.
And how about we leave it at this point? Because I know we can both talk about this for much, much longer, because it is a topic that's really important these days. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much. I hope people found it interesting. I hope you've learned something maybe, or you've relearned something, or you remembered something. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you.
Ciao.